Let's see who we have on the attendee list. Good evening, guys. Just give us a second. We should be starting in about, some of the committee members, about 5 to 10 minutes to, kind of come in. So, please be patient. And yes, I see the message here, Hector. We are muted. All right. So give us 5 to 10 minutes. Thanks. Hey, this is specifically for the committee. Radia, I know Hector, you have, I know you have an excuse to be on Zoom, but Carl, Radia, can you guys come in person? Is that possible for you guys?
I'm not able to come in person for the next for the next 1 hour.
Okay,
I mean, I can be there in like 45 minutes, but but I'm not able to do that right now. So
okay.
I mean, I fully intended to be there in person, but something just came up.
Yeah, because we might be voting on a resolution. We
Look,
need, just, go ahead.
I mean, if you don't have a quorum, I might show up later, but
Yeah, okay. That would be great because we're gonna vote on a resolution today. So, if you could come in person, should have emailed you guys, earlier in the week, but yeah, if you can, please come in
yeah,
person.
maybe
Great.
say 45 minutes ish.
Say it again? Yeah, that's fine.
5 minutes,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, because we won't vote till, later on anyway, so,
All right,
all right?
all
Thank you,
right.
Carl.
If push comes to shove, because
All right, so, I apologize for that. We were just figuring out, um, how we can get quorum, and we figured it out, so thumbs up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Give us about one more minute and we'll start, tonight's meeting. Thank you, Paola. I'm gonna start about.
Oh, these guys are, okay.
Yeah. A couple people on Zoom, so. There were a couple people on Zoom today, so.
Well, as long as we get quorum, right?
Right? This was important.
We have to vote on something?
So yeah, we are voting on a resolution today.
Whoa.
Yes, wow, you have been struggling. Crazy. Oh, no, I don't want to see your new format.
Okay. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7:10, March 5th, 2024. Can I get a motion to start today's meeting? Bruce, motions. Can I get a second?
Second,
Great. I'll call this meeting to order at 7:10. Good evening, everyone. Got a large live presence today, which is good to see. Good evening to everyone that's on YouTube and on Facebook Live. It's good to see people face to face. So I'm just gonna introduce myself. I'm gonna have the committee introduce themselves, and then we'll go from there. So my name is Joel Keys Abreu. I go by Joel. I've been on the community board about 3 years now. I've been the business development chair for 2 years. Born and bred in Washington Heights. I am a local. I love my community. And in this committee, what we do is we try to gather as much resources as possible to help our business and our entrepreneurs that come from this neighborhood. Really excited for today's meeting. Go ahead and introduce Alexis.
Hi, Alexis Marnow. I've been I was a public member for 5 years. Now I am on this committee as a full member, and I'm vice chair of Parks and Culture. I have been around, living around here for 18 years, but grew up, because this used to be a very Greek neighborhood, and I always like to mention that. It used to be a very Greek neighborhood, so I grew up going to church at St. Spiridon, where my mother would make me walk the bridge from Fort Lee to Washington Heights to go to that church.
Wow,
Yeah,
Good
she was
time.
a tough old
I
lady.
did not know this was a Greek neighborhood.
Yeah, my
Oh, yeah.
my maternal grandparents came here in like
Oh,
nineteen
you
oh six.
so you agree.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Came here in like 1906.
Wow,
And there's actually still 2 Greek churches up here.
wow.
Yeah. Like that whole Broadway section up after, always like Greek stores and the Greek festivals were all
I
the
did not
time.
know that. I,
And Maria Callas was born here.
when I first came to this country, we immigrated to Astoria in the 70s, which was back then all Greek.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you go to Greece, everybody knows a story.
But they don't know Washington Heights.
No,
Believe it or not, some of the elders do.
all right.
Bruce, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, Bruce Robertson. Here about 23 years. I'm in Lower Washington Heights down by the Audubon Park. Audubon, Hispanic Society and so forth. And I'm also on the Chamber of Commerce on the board. And I'm also on the bid development committee for Broadway from 155 to 178, which is going very slowly. And that's spearheaded by Cloth, Community League of the Heights of On Senate, who I think a lot of you may know. And I worked with this gentleman over the years to try to get small business lease negotiation rights passed. And we failed 7 or 8 years ago with the Small Business Job Survival Act. Unfortunately, the city council punked out them. So that's my axe to grind. And I'm on this committee under the auspices of our great chair. And here I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Happy you're with us. Hector, I saw you first. Can you introduce yourself, please? Hector, you there?
Of course, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Hector Bonilla. I was born and raised in Washington Heights. I'm currently in financial services, doing business development for the investment bank. I've had the pleasure of working under Joel for the past about a year now. I've shuffled amongst different subcommittees, but I'm also on the youth and education committee, as well as the cannabis task force serving nobles. And I'm just happy to be here and happy to help out in any way. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Hector. Radia, I'm missing you in person. I'm missing you in person.
I know, I'm usually there.
Yeah. Introduce yourself, please, Radia.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Radia Barnes. I am a lifelong Washington Heights resident. I am newish to the community board. This is my first term, my first year. And I also sit on the Housing and Human Services Committee as well.
Thank you so much, Radia. You're not new anymore. You got your stripes.
Right.
Carl, please introduce yourself.
Yes, good evening, folks. So my name is Carl Nebo. I live in this community a long time now, and I am an active, I like to think of myself as an active member of this committee. I also serve on the licensing committee, and I hope to be able to join you guys in person a bit later on. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I always like to introduce the people that always show up, and we work very closely too. So I have Miss Jackie Tesman from the Community League of the Heights, which is a community-based organization that we work very closely with. Please introduce yourself, Jackie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Joelle. I am Jackie Tessman, as Joelle just said. I'm the Director of Community and Business Development at Community League of the Heights, Cloth. And as Bruce mentioned before, we're working on a business improvement district on Broadway between 155th and 178th. And I know that Legal Aid is here presenting tonight, and I just want to say all great things about Rolando and his team. They've been incredibly, incredibly responsive, always, to any time any of our businesses need any help, within their, realm of assistance, of course. So thank you.
Yes, it's good to hear. Thank you so much. We also have the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. My good brother, Moiram Espino is here. He's a member of a CDFI, and is constantly involved in the funding of businesses here in Washington Heights, Upper Manhattan, and in the Bronx. So, Moiram, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. There, Joel, what's up, my brother? How you doing?
How you doing?
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Thank you for having me tonight, guys. My name is Moira Maspino, and Senior Business Development Officer for the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. Like Joel greatly said, we're CDFI here in Uptown. We provide a lot of different services for small business to nonprofits all over Uptown, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Who else? All right, great. We do have a board member here. Welcome, Daniel. Quick shout out. Thank you for joining us today, Daniel.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
All right, so
yay, Dan.
so we have a couple people here today in person. And before we get to them, I just have a couple announcements that I have to go through. So first thing is first, today is a big day, huge day. Sidewalk cafes, roadway cafe applications have opened up. So I'm gonna quickly share my screen. And thank you, Jackie, because I was able to get the PowerPoint. I was looking for the PowerPoint, and through your email, I was able to get it. So I'm glad. I just want to go through it really quickly. By no means I'm an expert at this, but we did have a lawyer come in from hospitality, New York City Hospitality Group, come in and talk about this. But I just want to show you specifics on certain documents that are going to be needed to apply for this and how the application looks like, okay? So this is extremely important for our businesses. This was an emergency act that, because of COVID, allowed businesses to open up, roadway cafes, sidewalk cafes with very minimal regulations. But we were able to kind of remove that or slowly phase out of that and go into this new thing called Dining Out NYC. You give me a few minutes, 2 seconds to pull it up.
And this means they have to get their stuff out today, or it's fine?
So it's open. So this means that it was rolled out in October,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna show you a timeline because it's part of the presentation.
You know what, just send that.
Yeah, I'll send it over to you. Yeah. But while we wait till this loads, please introduce yourselves, who's here from the public. So please introduce all of you guys. There's some people here from Banco Popular, and there's like Jackie mentioned, Rolando from the Legal Aid Society. But please introduce yourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's okay, they don't see me, right?
Yeah,
You want me to
so
walk
it's a,
around?
no, so it's an
Yeah.
owl, it's a 360 camera.
Oh,
So if you
wow.
speak, it will focus on you.
I am not gonna share this stuff with the other community boards. I've been at many of them, and this is high tech for me. So, hello, my name is David Lee. I'm really happy that you said Banco Popular, because you know our roots.
Yeah.
Obviously, we changed and rebranded to Popular Bank, but everyone knows us in the community as Banco Popular, but we are called Popular Bank now. My name is David Lee. I'm a senior vice president. I run an entire market for the retail network. I'm here with a lot of my great colleagues here today. Solomon, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll go down the road.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here and thank you for the opportunity as well. My name is Solomon Panaya. I'm the Director of Business Banking for Popular Bank for the New York Metro region. So it's definitely a pleasure and we're hoping for a fun event today.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carlos Manzanares. I am a Commercial Relationship Officer for Government Banking. And I am very pleased to be welcomed here tonight.
My name is Javier Ortiz. I manage the branch of the Dyckman. I've been with Popular Bank for 10 years. Thank you for having me today, Popular Bank.
Thank you.
Thank you. And introduce, I know you don't need an introduction, but go ahead, Rolando.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rolando Gonzalez, and I'm an attorney with the Legal Aid Society, and we work with small businesses. Thank you, Committee Board 12, for inviting us to speak on what we do and the services that we provide. And thank you, Jackie. It's always a pleasure working with Jackie and working with the community.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
get your last name.
Lee, L-E-E.
Okay. I don't
It's really simple. It was,
I know,
Yeah.
that's the sad part that
No.
Molly AJ couldn't.
no, listen.
Listen,
To this day, I have friends 40 years from Astoria, plus I still can't spell their last names.
But that's great, so it's.
Yeah,
it's long.
it's very long.
Yeah.
It's a lot of.
And I'm sorry, change the name, Banco Popular is now,
It's Popular.
Popular Bank.
Popular Bank.
thank you.
Thank you.
Belgium.
so, I don't know why this computer is not working, but I'm gonna try it one more time. Okay. All right, so,
You wanna get them going and?
yeah, no, so what I'll do is, so basically, I'll go through and I'll send it out in the minutes, this presentation, because it's really good. So
I've seen it.
a couple, yeah, I'm pretty sure you've seen it. So just to go through it really quickly. So March 2020, obviously pandemic happened. And then August 2023, this Dining Out NYC, was, kind of rolled out. October 23rd, the proposed program was, released in the rules. And then November 23, there was a public hearing, held, kind of like public comment period. Now, March 2024, we're here, the applications are open. So a couple of highlights. No, because it's not popping up on this computer. And yeah, so it's okay. But there's a couple of required documents. So I-47C, application affirmation form, authorized representative form, cellular basement door certification form, pest control certification form, property owner consent form, site plans, and a W-9. So all these documents are needed for this license to be able to set up sidewalk cafes, to set up roadway cafes. So there's a couple licensing fees that I just want to go over. So $1,050 for sidewalk cafes to initiate the application for both roadway cafes and sidewalk cafes. And if you want to do both, it's $2,100. There's a security deposit of $2,500. So these are just things that I want to mention to the people listening, because it's going to be a big deal. So this program is running from now to August 3rd. So you have this window to apply. And if you don't apply, then in November, the temporary shelter that you have now, the temporary kind of setup that you have outside, you have to take it down, or there will be enforcement. In this presentation, I can't show it, but there are certain measurements that you have to, it's the specs that you have to meet. So it's important to follow these. If you have any questions, there's a couple events that are happening in SBS that are gonna help you kind of go through this. So if you have any other questions, this is a huge opportunity for you to get right before enforcement comes in November. Apply for this. The applications are out today, okay? So I wanted to mention that it's really important. I've been talking about it for 4 months now, so today was the day.
Is there a merchant association that we have here? in
Yes,
Newport?
so yeah,
Okay.
we have a couple community board, not community board, community-based organizations, the BID, merchant associations. We have chambers of commerce that help the community out. So next thing I wanted to touch on, and we'll go from there.
Chamber. Can you put the chamber in that?
Yes,
Yeah.
the Chamber of Commerce, yeah. So another thing I wanted to mention, and this is kind of similar to what you guys do. This is important. So let me share this video. And then we can go on to the presentations. So for those businesses out there while that loads, so they in February of last month, I think it was February 11th, they made it illegal for businesses to pass on a credit card surcharge to clients, right? So, and there's certain things that you can and can't do in regards to wording. So I wanted to let our businesses know that it's important how you word things. I know that you can put what your cash price is, what your cash price is, and what your credit card price is. I'm gonna load this video because I think it's really good.
Did they start enforcement of it already?
I don't think so, but
I'm pretty.
It's better to get ahead of it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, I saw they had a illegal sign up. The big part is the fee can't be more than what you're getting charged by the merchant service provider. So the merchant service provider is charging 2.2% all in. The merchant can't pass on to the customer 2.5%. And there needs to be a lot of transparency with what they're getting charged. Because it can't be more than what they're paying to their provider.
Yes.
So it was very loose, you know, people would charge 3%, upwards of 5%.
Yeah, they would. Sometimes it came as on a profit on the merchant side.
It definitely is. It definitely was,
Right.
especially given the fact that a lot less people are paying with cash these days.
Right, especially with the rise of,
And what were you saying? So that's it was 2 point?
No, I was just giving you an example, man. So
It has to be
the regulation, they can't pass on the cost greater than what they're getting charged from their merchant service provider.
Right.
thank you.
And that might be different for every merchant, depending on their agreement with their merchant service provider.
Yeah, usually merchant service provider, POS systems could charge a fixed rate.
Yep.
Or they charge a percentage. And they will pass that on to our consumers. But I'm gonna put this video on, just so people at home and for the minutes get.
Great.
It's good. Wait a minute. Can't,
Not hearing anything, yeah.
you guys can't hear it?
I think you have to.
No, you can't see it.
Not hearing
Oh,
anything.
there's something wrong. I think the screen shifted down, or
Okay.
I don't know if it's anybody else, but that's my screen. I can't see anything.
Okay, can you see it now?
I
Yes,
can't. I'm not sure about anybody else. There we go. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just share again. Okay. Can you see it now? Guys, can you see it now? No? The committee, can you guys see it?
I can see, but no sound.
No sound.
Well, it's off right now.
I think it's unmuted.
Yeah, I'm gonna unmute it now, yeah. Um, yeah, if I unmute that, what happens is that,
Hello? Seriously, don't know.
so I know, I'm aware that you guys couldn't hear it. I just couldn't figure it out. However, a couple things, and maybe we can read it back, Alexa, some of the highlights in this video. It's just very important. I think that, there's gonna be a learning curve here. There's a lot of POS systems are kind of putting their feet on top of what the value of the item is, so it's tricky. But yeah, can we read that back, Alexa?
From what I got, the one a little fast.
Yeah.
But, I usually review these when I get home, but, basically, if I'm saying this right, businesses must inform customers upfront of the fees.
Mhm.
And it has to list the credit card fee and the cash fee,
Yep,
correct?
yep.
And there can't be any, shall we say, I know they didn't say this, but I'm paraphrasing, double dipping, so you can't just say, okay, well, we're charging you 4%
Yeah.
for, you know,
Something
credit
else.
card,
Yep.
and then, you know,
A discount
a
if you use
discount of
cash.
cash, it has to
Yeah.
be the same across the board.
It's
It has to
like-
be integrated
Yes.
into the regular.
Yeah,
price.
so it's
Transparency, yeah.
it's basically, so, we don't, intrude on the business of Visa and these merchant processing. And we kind of are transparent about the two values. So, wanted to show that, so just make sure our businesses out there that we're doing it the right way. We're gonna put some of the highlights in the minutes and, go from there. Yes, Bruce?
So if a retailer takes three different types of cards,
Mhm.
MasterCard, Visa, American Express.
Mhm.
They're all different rates.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do they have
So-
to, program everything new
So
to separate that?
it doesn't have to, I don't think that Visa and certain, like,
MasterCard.
card providers
Right.
have different rates, but the processing of those payments is what affects the
Oh,
price.
through an intermediary.
So, for
But
example.
do they all charge the same rate?
No,
they
so there's
don't.
competing rates. So I, you know, when I used to work at JP Morgan, we used to have a POS system that charged the rate. And then you have, merchants like Toast or like Square, all these merchant processing,
Oh, okay, so they're
companies.
doing that.
Yeah,
That's what
they're-
they have to factor in.
Correct, exactly, exactly.
I
I
got
think
it.
the best way we can describe this, like, I know it's hard, people that don't drive, but the gas station, they already had to do this regulation. So there's a cash price and a credit card price.
Right.
And the regulation is clear. It's just about transparency. You have to list it in dollars. You have to be very clear.
Yeah.
Credit card, you pay this price.
Yeah.
And cash.
in dollars, cash in this price, just like
There
the
you go.
gas station.
They've been doing that for a while.
And
Yeah.
because they had to pay a lot of penalties for the federal government
Right.
for it, you know?
So it's important that we know, we note that and just letting a business know that.
Yeah, it's
we'll put it
important.
in.
I don't know when they're gonna start enforcement. Hopefully not soon.
Right.
But yeah, everyone is against, it won't get anywhere. Credit card, it's like 4%, 5%, 3%. Yeah, it's.
So there's not a specific date for enforcement.
For no, not as of yet, but I'll look at it, and I'll see, I'll send it to you if there is a date. But for the folks that are on Zoom, Tanisha, I saw your message, we just couldn't get the audio to work, so, sorry about that. And please introduce yourself, because you are a board member.
Yeah, about that, before I introduce myself, when you're sharing the screen, look down. There should be a box that says share the sound, and you want to check that so that everybody can hear the sound. But hey, y'all, I'm Tanisha Grant. I am a board member. I try to visit as many committees as I can, but I am on the Youth and Education Committee and the Housing and Human Services Committee. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank-
Tanisha.
Thank you. Yeah, I just saw your message, Tanisha. Yeah, some places do overcharge, and like one of our guys mentioned, Lee, he said that, you know, they could mark up to the point where they're cashing in on a profit.
They are cashing in a profit.
Yeah.
They are.
Uh,
It's understandable. They've
yeah.
been paying those fees for a long time, you
Yeah.
know? and
Yeah, I don't.
I
think
understand.
It's not understandable to overcharge your customers. It's cheating. them.
Yeah, but there was no regulation against it before. That was the problem, you know? There was no law in place that said you couldn't do it. And just like that video said, the merchants, the ones who are helping them, we're encouraging the merchants to pass on those.
Of
fees.
course, yeah.
And well, if I could pass on 2%, which was what they're being charged, well, why can't I charge 4%?
Right.
Or 5%? So that's where it became a lot of the issues.
All right, and if any of the community members see this, bring it to our attention, you know? Maybe we can connect with those business owners that are doing those practices. But let me move the agenda along. We have our first presenter today, Mr. Rolando. He is here from the Legal Aid Society. I'm gonna put up your slides, come onto the podium. And thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for inviting me. So will you move the slides?
Yes,
or-
I will.
Okay.
I'll be able.
So once again, good evening, everyone, and I am one of the attorneys in the Community Development Project. We are of the Legal Aid Society. We are on 125th Street in Harlem, but we provide our services citywide. And I just want to tell you a little bit about our services and how you can access our free services. So we provide free transactional services to low-income small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and we also work with HDFC co-ops. As I mentioned, our services are free. We do have income guidelines for legal representation, but if anyone contacts us, we can talk to them. We can give free advice. We can review leases. Anything beyond that, then you have to meet our income guidelines, but at the very least, if you contact us, we can speak to you, we can probably give you resources where you may be able to maybe get additional assistance if we can't help you. For our small businesses, we do everything from helping someone. We help both existing businesses and startups. So we can help with choosing what the best legal structure is, sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company. We can go through the pros and cons, mostly what the tax consequences are of each, and what the liability consequences are, which are usually the two issues that most people want to know about legal structure, as well as the cost. We also work with incorporating if people are eligible for our assistance. We help with the corporate governance. One of the biggest issues I see with a lot of people people who've been in business is that they don't have the proper documents. And this comes up in one of two situations. It comes up when they try to get a loan, or it comes up when they look for certification as an MWBE business. And what we see is, if you're a corporation, they don't have bylaws, they never issue shares, they never had a board meeting, they don't have, they've been in business for 20 years, but they never actually had a board of director meeting, they never approved any decisions. On the other side, for LLCs, we see that they never had an operating agreement, they never actually did the publication. And once again, this comes up a lot of times when people are either trying to get a loan and they need these documents, or they're trying to be certified with the city or the state, because what ends up happening is a lot of people go to someone who might be the quote unquote the accountant, who isn't, and sort of just basically files with the Department of State that doesn't have the proper documents. And unfortunately, if they do this, they're not legally protected. So if they get sued and they think they're protected because they have a corporation or limited liability company, but they don't have the proper documents, or they're not following the proper steps, then they have liability, they have personal liability. So one of the biggest things when I do these trainings is I tell people, even if you're the only owner of your business, you still have to conduct your business as a corporation or as an LLC, as any other corporation. So we can help with the corporate governance. We help with commercial leasing. We help with employment issues. The biggest issues with employment issues is that everyone wants to classify someone as an independent contractor so that they don't have to pay for insurance and that they don't have to pay those FICA taxes.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they're not independent contractors. And we can sort of go through the analysis, because if it turns out that you are treating someone as an independent contractor when they're not, one or two things can happen. Either the state can find out and you can have penalties, or the person can be disgruntled once they're let go and they get an attorney and then they sue them. And it seems like for this type of infraction, people are able to get attorneys pro bono because they know there's money there. It's just like they do with insurance. So a little bit of IP, we don't do a lot of IP, but we can advise people on sort of whether they need to trademark or copyright. We can review contracts. So we can do a lot of the stuff that small business owners need, whether they're existing or whether they're starting. The one thing we don't do is we don't do litigation. However, because I've done landlord-tenant work in the past, and so if a commercial business owner receives like a 14-day notice or court papers, I can review them and tell them sort of what the next steps are, but we don't represent them. We also do a lot of, I do a lot of trainings, a lot of webinars on a lot of it is on commercial leasing, legal structure, but we also do a lot of trainings as well. The main reason I'm here though is that we are excited to launch a free legal clinic. So beginning March 20th, we are gonna have a virtual clinic. We'll pass this around. We will have a virtual clinic where people will be able to sign up and speak to an attorney one-on-one. It's going to be between 30 and 45 minutes. So we encourage, if you have any business owners, anyone who may need legal assistance, they can sign up and they'll be able to get a one-on-one with an attorney. Otherwise, people can also reach out to me, and I am happy to speak to anyone who might need legal assistance. This is our brochure or little information on us. Pass this along. Thank you. So when I spoke to Joel, he had mentioned that one of the big issues facing a lot of the business owners was commercial leasing. And we discussed possibly doing a commercial leasing training for the businesses somewhere down the future, but
Yeah.
I think we discussed maybe a few minutes of touching on some of the
Yeah.
issues that are facing existing commercial tenants. And I know when I do this, I sort of, there are two trainings. There's one training for individuals who are starting or looking for space and what to look for and how to protect themselves. And then there's also this one, which is going to touch on some of the things that people need to know, even once they're in a commercial space, what are some of the issues that come up? So I will do that. I will sort of get into this a little quickly. So,
I know we spoke on it, but we look forward to it because this is important. This is one of our hot topics. Commercial leases, especially during the pandemic, it was hard for people who were in leases to come out of it, and there was no programs to assist with it. So it's good. Thank you for agreeing to share a little bit about it.
Unfortunately, one of the biggest issues is that there really are very few laws that protect commercial tenants. And the best protection is having legal assistance and looking at reviewing the lease before signing it. Once people sign the lease, a lot of times there are issues in there that even if they're not fair, and I get that all the time. Someone will call and say, you know what, this isn't fair, and I'll look at it and they've agreed to something like they're paying most of the taxes in the building, or they're paying like the water bill for the whole building. And unfortunately, once they've signed the lease, they're responsible for what's in it. Because the court assumes that it's two sophisticated people who are negotiating. So unlike a residential lease, where even if it's not in the lease, if you rent an apartment, you're gonna have certain protections. Whereas with the commercial lease, your protections are basically within the contract. So next slide, the one after. So commercial lease basics. Basically, the lease is gonna govern most of the relationship between the landlord and the tenant. All of the landlord's obligations, all of the tenant's rights have to be written in the lease. So if the landlord promises something and then you sign the lease and it's not in there, you lost that right. Oral agreements are not going to protect tenant because you're not going to be able to enforce them. I also tell people a lot of times when they're negotiating, they may not want to put something in. You're not sure that the person you're negotiating this lease is the person you're going to end up with. I can't tell you how many times someone has a good relationship with the landlord. And their feeling is that I don't need to have it in there. I trust the landlord. And what happens? The landlord sells the building. And the next person in is going to review that lease and enforce it. Or something happens with the landlord and it's not the landlord who's enforcing it, it's the landlord's kids. And they're not as friendly as the landlord is. So you want to make sure that anything that you need is in that lease. One of the things that people are surprised at, and this came up a lot during the pandemic, is that in most leases, there's a provision that says that the obligation to pay rent is independent from the landlord's obligation. So we saw during the pandemic that even though a lot of businesses were closed by the government, they still had an obligation to pay rent. Because the lease says that your obligation to pay rent continues unless there's something in the lease that says otherwise. At the same time, a lot of people are surprised that they have an issue. They have a leak in their space, or they have another issue in the space and the landlord's not addressing it, so they withhold their rent. But unless the lease says that they can withhold their rent, if you do that, you're basically subject to most likely penalties that are in the lease. You most likely also subject yourself to the lease being terminated. So it's important for people to realize that the best option isn't always to withhold your rent if you're not getting a service that you think you deserve from the landlord. You want to review the lease and make sure that the lease provides for that remedy. Otherwise, you have to continue to pay the rent, and then your remedy is basically to sue the landlord. it's important that even if something does not exist in the lease, you can always try to negotiate it. The worst that can happen is that the landlord can say, you don't have that right. But it's a good thing that if you have a certain issue with the landlord and it's better to address it with the landlord and try to remedy the problem once there is a problem, rather than you wait until it gets to become a bigger problem and it ends up costing you a lot more money. One prime example is a lot of times when tenants are not able to pay their rent, the best option is usually to reach out to the landlord and have a conversation with the landlord. Once it gets to the point of the landlord suing the commercial tenant, in a certain case, they're going down a bad path for several reasons. One is that a lot of times it's easier to address the issue directly with the landlord than to wait until you're in court. Because at that point, you're dealing with the landlord's attorney who's getting paid, who probably is going to be less sympathetic. The second is, if you're a corporation or an LLC, you have to be you have to hire an attorney to represent you. You can't go in and answer, and most likely you're also responsible for the landlord's attorney's fees as well in the lease. Next slide. So these are some of the important issues, the important terms that come up when reviewing commercial leases and with commercial. One of the most important things is who's the tenant. Ideally, the tenant will be a corporation or limited liability company because that's going to limit the individual tenant's personal liability. If it's individual tenant's name, then they're going to be responsible for the entire debt that's under the lease. So this becomes important because a lot of people will go out and they'll spend $2,000 for an LLC. They'll do the publication and then they sign a lease and the lease is in their individual name. If you have a corporation or an LLC, but the lease is in the individual name, you have no protection. You're responsible for all the debts of the business. Even if you're a corporation or limited liability company, 99.9% of the commercial tenants are going to have to sign a personal guarantee. And there are two guarantees. You have a full guarantee, which is basically what it means. You're guaranteeing everything in the lease. And then you have a good guy guarantee, which is what most people should try to get in their lease. The way the good guy guarantee works is generally, if you meet certain conditions, provide the landlord with certain notice, and you give the notice and you comply with paying all the rent up until that point, you are able to walk away from the lease and not owe the remainder of the months on the lease. Now, the corporation or the LLC will still be liable, but most people want to protect themselves. They can always close the corporation or the LLC. The problem is if they're personally liable, because then they have to file for bankruptcy or try to look for some other way to resolve their issues. Now, a landlord is almost never going to want to allow a tenant to terminate the lease. The closest they're going to get is the good guy guarantee. And you want to negotiate 2-3 months in order to be able to have to give only that notice, and then at that point follow the rest of the lease regarding ending the term. Rent and additional rent. It's important to be able to know that you have that base rent on that first page. Beyond that, that's not what a tenant's going to pay. They're going to be other costs, real estate taxes, utilities, operating expenses, insurance, water, late fees, attorney's fees. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you know what that additional rent is. That additional rent is always going to be in the lease categorized as rent. So you could pay your monthly rent every month, but if you don't pay real estate taxes or any of these other additional rent, you can face penalties, fines, and you can also be sued and evicted for not paying the additional rent. Renewal option. So the biggest issue here is that no matter how long you've been in your space, you could have been in that space 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. If you don't have a renewal option in that lease, you don't have a right to be there once the lease expires. The landlord does not have to offer you another lease. The landlord has no restrictions regarding how much they can charge you. So you want to negotiate a renewal option. If you're in the middle of a lease and you're going to put money into the space, you want to negotiate the ability to be able to extend that lease. If you have a renewal option, it's extremely important to pay attention to when can you exercise it and how do you have to do it. By that, I mean, I've seen people who have renewal leases. It said you have to do it 6 months before the lease expires. They let that time go by. And then once they let that time go by, even if they go back to the landlord, depending on what the market rate is, they may not allow for the lease to be renewed if they've blown by the notice requirement. The other thing is, if the notice requirement says you have to do this by certified mail return receipt, telling the landlord verbally, sending an email is not enough. You have to comply with whatever the lease says. Assignment or sublet. Generally, if you want to sell the business, if you want to sublease the space, you're going to need the landlord's approval. And if you sublease the space or assign it without the landlord's approval, that's a major violation of the lease. That can result in the landlord basically terminating the lease. So you want to be able to know what the rights are for you to be able to sell, what's the landlord's time frame for responding to you, and what happens after you sell, after you're out of the lease. Are you still responsible for the landlord for any debt on space? Alterations. People are surprised that they can't just make any changes to the space that they want. You have to look at the lease and see what the lease says. Some leases are strict as you can't even paint and put up a shelf without the landlord approving it. And others will be more flexible and will say, if you're going to spend more than $10,000 in repairs, then we need your approval. But a lot of times the landlords are going to want approval to approve any work that is going to be done in the space. They're going to want to see if it's major work. They're going to want to see plans. They're going to want to know who the contractor is. They may want to approve who the contractor is, and they might want to charge fees in order to review any plans. So if you're going to do work, make sure you know what's in the lease. More importantly, if you're going to do work and your lease is going to expire, make sure you speak to the landlord and try to get an extension. I've seen people invest $20,000 in a space, the lease expires, and the landlord doesn't renew the lease.
Yeah.
So just because you the response is, I just invested all this money in the space. You should have actually confirmed with the landlord or made sure you had a lease renewal before investing in the space. So if you're going to put money in the space and you have 1, 2, 3 years to go on your lease, speak to the landlord, try to get an extension just so that you can make the most of what you're investing in the space. Next slide. So repairs. All of your responsibilities for making repairs, all of the landlord's obligations have to be in the lease. If it's not in the lease, you don't have that right. So once again, you get people calling all the time asking, I have a leak, who's responsible for, or I have this condition in my space, who's responsible for fixing it? The answer is going to depend on what's in your lease. Every lease is different. Hopefully you negotiate it, but your rights are in the lease regarding what you're responsible for and what the landlord is responsible for. Now, you have no right to withhold your rent if the landlord doesn't make repairs unless that's in the lease. You have no right to make the repairs and then try to deduct it from the space, as some people try to do. All of this has to be either in the lease or you need to try to negotiate with the landlord and get it in writing. Defaults. Basically, default can be not paying your rent on time. It can be not having insurance as per the lease. It can be subletting the space without the landlord's approval. But you want to be careful about defaults, because if there's a default, that could lead to termination, which could lead to you basically being evicted from your space, but still having to pay the remainder of the lease term. So you want to know what triggers a default. You want to know whether you have, the landlord has to give you notice or whether the landlord can terminate the lease immediately. And you want to know whether you have an opportunity to cure, meaning an opportunity to fix the problem before the landlord can take any action. Now, one of the most important things is a default can also limit some of your rights. The biggest one being if you have the right to a lease renewal, a lot of times the lease will say if you're in default or if you fail to pay rent, for example, twice within a 1 year period or twice within the lease, you may lose that right to renew your lease. So you want to understand what is considered a default and what the consequences of defaults might be regarding to what your rights are. Next slide. So termination, as a tenant, you're only probably going to have a right to terminate the lease under the good guy clause. The landlord's going to have the right to terminate the lease. You want to know what that is and what happens if the landlord terminates the lease. What are the penalties? What are the fees? What are you going to be responsible for? Use, you can only use the space for your permitted use. In fact, you can typically, there are three things that limit your use. What the lease says, the permitted use clause, which is typically on the first page of the lease, the building C of O, and any zoning regulations. But the permitted use is important because if you want to change the use of your space, and your space is very limited, you have to go back and try to negotiate with the landlord. If you use the space for anything other than what's in the lease, then that's also a major violation of your lease. End of the lease. People usually don't think about this, but the end of the lease is important because it goes through what's the condition that you have to leave the space in. If you took the space and you basically built it out and you build walls and you have to now restore the space at the end of the lease, that's going to cost you money. You want to know that. Do you have to remove furniture? Who owns the fixtures? All of this is important. And you want to know this if there's a violation of the lease, you want to know this at the end of the lease. Abandonment of surrender. I know during the pandemic, for a lot of people, they just basically gave up on the lease. And that's the worst thing you can do. You still have some leverage while you're in the space. The best case scenario is trying to reach an agreement on a surrender, because at that point, you might be able to limit your liability. And the reason why that's important is, even if you're in the space, if you're not paying money, if you have difficulty paying money, it's important for the landlord to be able to get the space back and get you out as soon as possible. That way they can get the space, they can try to rent it. At the same time, they don't have to pay an attorney and they don't have to spend several months going back and forth to court. So if you're in the space and you have and you're having difficulty paying your rent or you need to leave, the best solution is not abandonment, but to try to reach a surrender agreement with the landlord. Next slide. So these are some general tips for tenants. Basically review the lease and know what your obligations and rights are. Every lease is different. So you may have one landlord that may have 4 tenants, all adjacent, and the leases might be slightly different. So you want to make sure just because someone else's lease says something, doesn't mean that your lease says the same thing. If there's an issue, as I mentioned, the best solution is to try to work something out before the landlord commences an eviction proceeding. Don't be hesitant to talk to the landlord about renegotiating any provisions. If you're having trouble paying rent, if you need a lease renewal, any issues, the worst that can happen is the landlord can say no, but a lot of times by just negotiating, you're able to get something or something that you didn't have before. Maintain insurance. A lot of people try to cut corners by not having insurance that's required in their lease, but failure to have insurance is a material default in the lease. Like during the pandemic, when there was that moratorium, some of the landlords, what they were doing was they were going through the lease and saying, you're supposed to have insurance. And they reached out and they asked, let me see a copy of your insurance. And then if they have insurance, they got a termination notice, because that's a way of terminating the lease. If you default on any of your material terms in the lease, that's a reason. And one of the biggest ones is not having the proper insurance. As I mentioned, if you're going to make repairs, alterations, look and analyze how much time is left on your contract. before making the determination whether it makes sense or not. Next slide. So you can make changes to the lease, you can amend the lease, but make sure you get it in writing. I've seen this also, it happened a lot during the pandemic, it still happens. People speak to the landlord, they're in arrears, they owe 60,000, they pay the landlord 40,000 with the expectation that they'll be able to, they'll pay $1,000, for example, on a monthly basis. And what happens? The landlord takes the 40,000 and still starts a not payment proceeding. So if you have an agreement with the landlord, if you're behind and you have arrears, make sure you have an agreement in writing. Don't just turn money over. Oral agreements will not protect you. And don't forget about notice requirements. So if you have a lease renewal, make sure you comply with the notice requirements. Otherwise, you may lose that right. Be proactive in dealing with potential lease defaults. And once again, if you don't ask, you're not going to get. The only way you know you're not going to get something that you might need is by not negotiating, by not asking the landlord. So if you need assistance, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to the Community Development Project. And if you need help, feel free to also sign up for our free legal clinic.
All right, thank you so much, Rolando. I'm gonna ask the committee, those who are on Zoom and in person, if you guys have any questions.
So there really is no protection for retail tenants to renegotiate their leases.
No, there isn't. I always tell commercial tenants, your best leverage is at the very beginning because you can walk away. Once you've built out a space and once you've invested in that space,
You're stuck.
you're stuck. Because and landlord knows this. You're gonna have to go somewhere else. You're gonna have to rebuild the space. You're gonna have to take months to start your business up again. So your best, everything you want to negotiate at the beginning. You want to look toward the future and think about what you need and negotiate that into the lease.
Part of the problem is the landlords don't want to give anything.
Yeah.
So give you a 3-year lease and yeah, we'll talk about it later. And some of the small owners just go along with it. Yeah.
Anybody on Zoom has any questions?
I just,
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Would you mind just, I mean, I kind of know this, so. What says the tenant's right termination, good guy clause, can you just, I mean, I was typing, so can you just give me a little more clarity on the good guy
On the good
clause?
guy clause?
Yes, because I'm not understanding if these landlords have basically carte blanche to break the lease or evict people. I would just like to know, how is it a good guy clause?
So the good guy clause is for the tenant.
Yeah, so how does that work in
Yeah.
their favor? Because it's not, it seems that everything is really against it, no matter what they do. So how, in what way is that a good guy clause to protect the tenants? Because it just doesn't seem to jive from what we've been hearing, from what I heard.
So the good guy clause works in this way. You're in a 10-year lease and you sign a guarantee, but the guarantee might say that if you give the landlord 90 days notice and you pay all of the rent that's owed through that 90-day period, that as long as you leave the space in room clean condition and you take everything out, you're able to walk away personally from the remainder of the lease obligation. So it's a great benefit to the commercial tenant if you're in a 10-year lease and for whatever reason you need to get out after year 5. And otherwise you'd be on the hook for the remaining the other 5 years.
Right.
Whether on this situation, you basically would be able to, as long as you pay everything, you're able to walk away and not have to pay the remainder of the term. Now, what some landlords do, I've seen some landlords up here, is that the notice period is like a year, which is difficult because if you're struggling, the longer you have to try to have to continue to pay the rent, the harder it is.
Right.
Like I remember during the pandemic, I don't remember who it is, but there's one landlord that has property up here that had like a 1-year notice period. And it's kind of difficult because if you're struggling, how you have to now continue to pay rent and keep up to date for 1 year before you're able to get out of the lease.
The semi-good guy.
Exactly.
So how often do do landlords, welcome Carl, do landlords use this clause? And is it something that is seldomly used, or is it, more of a common practice?
It's actually, it's more common because the landlord, it sounds like it's only for the tenant's benefit, but it actually benefits the landlord as well. Once again, if you're in a space and you have a tenant that can't pay their rent, and they're there and they're basically just accruing arrears, and you have to go to court and you have to hire an attorney, it's to the landlord's benefit to get the space back as quickly as possible so that they can re-rent it and they don't incur more debt. Because even though they can go after the tenant, if the tenant doesn't have anything to pay, they're just accruing more debt.
Okay.
So it's to the landlord's benefit to be able to have the tenant turn the space back over, and they can try to find someone who's actually going to be able to pay the rent.
Because we're still looking for their mortgage payments.
Exactly.
Right, yeah. So I have, just give me 1 second, Hector, go ahead.
Thank you, Joel. Mr. Gonzalez, great presentation. My first question is, will these slides be available after this conversation? Hopefully I don't run into this landlord that you said that owns lots of real estate up here, but I may have missed this first part. What are the requirements to sign up for legal representation, I would say, with the Legal Aid Society for business? And then 2, would you act in a fiduciary capacity for said businesses if they meet the requirements?
So regarding the slides, Joel has the slides, so I'm sure he can make them available. Basically, it's just a matter of contacting us. So small business owners that need assistance, they can contact me directly. I'll leave my contact information is in the slides. I'll also leave the information with the board. They can also reach out and sign up for the legal clinic as well.
Wonderful.
Legal assistance.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And the requirements at the very beginning, you said it was a certain amount in revenue they had to make or something like that. I didn't catch that part.
So for legal advice, we will speak with anyone. If they want legal representation, meaning beyond advice or beyond reviewing a document, then they need to meet our income guidelines, which is like 350% of the federal poverty guidelines. And it depends on how many people are in the household. We're not looking at business income, we're looking at personal income. But at the very least, you're going to get to speak to an attorney. And you're going to get advice, and sometimes that initial consultation is like 3 or 4 times. But at the very least, you're going to get to speak to an attorney.
Understood. My name was Hector Bonilla, by the way. Please be on the lookout for an email from me. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Hector. I have a few questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and allow. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Bruce. No, go ahead.
Are you finding many small businesses going into default post-pandemic?
Not as much, you know, I mean.
The PPP helped.
The PPP overflowed the community support.
Yeah,
Quite frankly, there's a lot of businesses that still have not touched the PPP money and they've left it in their accounts. So, I mean, the PPP has definitely been a lifesaver for a lot of the community. It's sad to see, and we at Popular Bank did tremendous. For our size, we try to go out to every small business. They're 20,000 in revenue, we're still wanting to talk to them. But it's a shame that so many companies that could have used PPP help did not get it.
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off,
No,
just because I want to just stick to the question. We have 2 questions directly for Orlando, but we will get back to you.
I was sort of tying it in because.
Oh, absolutely.
You are finding businesses in legal trouble, you send them to him.
Well, and when we go up and speak, because there's a lot of correlation between, what you do for the community and what we're trying to do. So
there's certain industries like the beauty industry is really struggling.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that because people are not everyone, as you were mentioning before. I think before we started, not everyone is full-time back in the office.
Yep.
And I think to a certain extent that's impacting that industry.
A lot of folks are, it impacts every retailer. And one of the things that I agree with Mayor Adams about is getting people back to support the economy.
Exactly.
And I agree with him on that. One of few, but I agree with him on that. you know?
We won't close it.
So, Jackie, go ahead. I'm sorry. You're on mute.
Jackie.
I'm sorry, I have a blank screen still, so I can't really see anything. It was just, there we go. Thank you, Joel. No, Rolando, can you just send that information for the legal clinic?
I will send it to you directly, because we have the flyers here. But I will send it to you tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And also, I don't know if you know or not, but there's a question in the Q&A.
Yeah, I was gonna get to it right now. So I have a question in the chat. Thank you, Jackie. What protections do commercial retail tenants have or should know about when the landlord becomes insolvent? Will BK courts uphold the existing lease?
So the landlord, the tenant's protection is gonna be what's in the lease. And unfortunately, a lot of times where tenants are saying that the landlord is harassing them or is being difficult because they're not providing certain services, but if it's not in the lease and the landlord's not required to provide it, it's not harassment. So for example, typically a lot of times it might be key or other services that the landlord might not be providing, but the landlord might not be required to provide it. So it's a matter of reviewing the lease, making sure that the tenant understands what their responsibilities are, what the landlord's obligations are, and then seeing whether there really is, whether the landlord is really being difficult and harassing the tenant. Because there are remedies if the landlord's harassing the tenant. The question is it harassment as per the New York City rules?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Shoshana, for the question. So I have a few questions. So first, I know that you mentioned 3 uses. It was zoning uses, what's put on the lease, and you mentioned something else of
Certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
The C of O. So those three things are going to regulate what the space can be used for.
Okay. My next question is, let's say you stop paying your lease. The lease is under LLC. Obviously, the landlord's gonna get lawyers, you're gonna get people involved to try to collect the funds. What if the LLC doesn't have any? What happens to the individual? Because obviously it's under an individual, the LLC. Does the landlord go after the individual?
Well, as I mentioned, like 99.9% of the time, there's a personal guarantee. So the landlord can go directly after, landlord can go after the LLC and also the guarantor, or they can go directly after the guarantor. And a lot of times with small businesses, the landlord knows that the business itself doesn't have a lot of funds. So that's why the landlord's going to require as many guarantors as possible. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's all the partners, but they want to be able to go after someone who may have resources, and that's why they want the guarantors.
Okay. So quick question, and I don't know if you know this, but is there any way to see the current active leases in our neighborhood?
It's not recorded.
It's not recorded.
It's not recorded, no.
Okay. And my last 2 questions is this event with the SBS? Because I heard of a similar event for SBS.
They probably have it as well. That is not with the SBS.
Oh,
that's not wrong. We just sort of launched this. This will be the first month that we're doing it.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome. My last question is, okay. Okay, I think that was it. All right. Yeah. All right. Any questions from the public? No, those are old hands, right? Right? Old hands, right, Jackie? Hector?
Jackie,
I
Jackie's near
believe
the.
Jackie has a question.
Okay. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Hector.
My question is the onus on the tenant or the landlord to get an updated certificate of occupancy? Because I noticed on the website for building, sometimes the certificate of occupancy has been stale for about 20 years. And I know a lot of, especially in the Inwood area, with the entire Inwood zoning, a lot has changed, especially in the Sherman Creek area. But who does the onus belong to? Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. That is a great question.
That's a hard thing to do.
No, because this is what ends up happening. Regardless of what the landlord says, it's going to be on the tenant to make sure that their business complies with the current C of O. And I've seen situations where landlord knows exactly what the tenant wants to use the space for. On the very first page in big letters, it has what the tenant wants to use the space for. And then throughout the lease, it says it's the tenant's responsibility to comply with the C of O and to make sure that they comply with all laws. So what ends up happening is if the tenant moves into a space and the C of O is not in compliance with their business and they get closed down, they still have the obligation to pay rent, and it's their obligation to go and amend the C of O, which is really expensive. So the onus is on the tenant to make sure that they comply with the certificate of occupancy. Because if they can't use the space for what they want to use it, they still have an obligation to pay rent. And I've seen many businesses end up having to basically close before even starting, just because they weren't aware that the C of O didn't support their specific business, and they assumed that because the landlord was renting them the space, that they were in a good position, and they're not.
Wow.
That's understood. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the answer.
You're welcome. Jackie, you have a question?
No, Jackie's good. Well, we have your information. We will be sure to refer any businesses that need those type of advice to the Legal Aid Society. We have your information. Anybody who needs the PowerPoint, I'll be happy to forward it over to you. But thank you so much on behalf of CD12 and the Business Development Committee. A lot of information there, but we look forward to working more, right? Doing more events and more presentations on different other topics. So thank you.
Thank you again for inviting me to speak with you, and I'm happy to do a training in the future with the businesses.
All right, thank you. All right, it's good. Thank you. So just to move on with the agenda, welcome, Carl. Thank you for joining us in person. We have the reason why I told you to come in is because Banco Popular, or Popular Bank now,
Yeah, thank you.
is here to present to us what is a banking development district, and is looking for a letter of support. So we're asking them to explain to us what is indeed a banking development district and how Banco Popular Bank is going to help the community in that way. So welcome, Mr. Lee, right?
Yep, David, please.
David Lee.
David.
David,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Have
The PowerPoint up there.
PowerPoint?
So
Fantastic. Yeah, it's much easier. We're old school.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I do the minutes.
Okay, fantastic.
So I'm gonna go into the PowerPoint right now. Just bear with me.
Well, I know you're getting set, and Belinda, I really appreciate what you're doing. Because one of the tenets of Popular Bank is about financial literacy. And what you just did in 40 minutes was really give, legal literacy, basic literacy that a lot of folks take for granted in other communities. And I was having this conversation with actually one of the community leaders here that we met with one of my other branches that is in the community. And the one thing that I said to them was, one thing that I don't see within this community is enough commercial brokers that grew up in this neighborhood. Because we take for granted in some of our privileged neighborhoods that you have commercial brokers. Yes, they're working for the landlord, but they're also should be working for the tenants. And, it's one of the things that you clearly see in certain communities that there isn't enough. Because we all know attorneys are very difficult, they're costly. but there's not enough commercial real estate brokers that are working for the great tenants that are here. And I think they trust those that are working for the landlord to provide them the right details, and it's a shame. Anyway, I love it. Thank you so much for your service, because that's what we are talking about when you discuss what we're trying to do. So yes, we're Popular Bank. We used to be called Banco Popular. We have 130 years in banking business. One of the things that makes us unique is that we are one of the largest, what you would call MDIs in the United States. And that is simply called a minority deposit institution. That is classified by FDIC, if you see right there. And basically all that really means is that you can have two things. One, the majority of the shareholders in the corporation are minorities, and or your executive leadership team is majority minorities. All right, C-suite executives, that's where we fall in, where I believe the count was 96% of all of our C-suite executives are of minority basis. Thus, we are MDI. We are the second largest in the United States behind this bank called East West that primarily serves the Asian communities. As you know, our roots are within the South Bronx here in New York. Where our heart is really with low to moderate income areas. That's where we generate the vast majority of our revenues here in New York City. That's where we continue to do banking, and it coincides what BDD really is about. And I understand everyone wants to know if you kind of keep flipping the pages because it's very long. And I know that we had a riveting legal literacy. You don't want to hear more than banking. I don't want to put everyone to sleep. You did not, sir. You did a great job. So if you could skip to the next few pages, for those folks who are there, yeah, you could, okay. Keep going. So once again, when we talk about Popular Bank, this is really interesting. We have a Popular Foundation that is fully funded by all the employees. And what we do, it's actually this next one. It's one of the greatest things about working here. So we have, since 2004, our own foundation that's literally made up by employees giving money. And we literally give, I think we've awarded, how much? It was at $200,000. Is that the amount? $2.5 million. I'm sorry. $2.5 million of employees' money that we take out every paycheck, so it goes back to the communities. And we've actually funded a lot of communities in this community board, in this community 12, and every community that we serve here in New York. But one of the foundational things, if you skip to the next page, is really what BDD is about and why we are here looking for support. The BDD was created in 1997 for a primary reason: to help banks stay in certain communities. One of the things, as you guys probably know, around the business development community that you guys serve, is the lack of certain neighborhoods having resources in certain industries. One of the things that have been happening all throughout the banking industry, as you all know, is banks within certain communities close more branches than they keep open. And it happens to be most of the low to moderate income areas where banks decide to exit those communities. Why? The truth of the matter is it's a lot harder to earn profit in those markets than they are in Midtown Manhattan. So this BDD program was created to try to incentivize banks to stay in those communities, use resources from New York State, and they provide us with deposits so that we could go back and provide needed capital in the form of small business loans, first home buyers mortgages, unsecured credit, personal loans. We are one of the very few banks that still provides an unsecured loan to the customer with the personal guarantee, of course, right? No good guy, good gal, no clause there. We do require a personal guarantee, but we're one of the very few banks that do that. We also have multiple different programs called credit builders, secured cards that we do to help people build credit. So the foundation of a lot of our products and solutions are based upon trying to give back to these communities. And a big part of this BDD program is basically, this is the way it works. They provide us with deposits. They give us $10 million and they say, here you go. Not free. They charge us a very high interest rate, more than you guys probably get from your banks. It's actually cost too much, but that's another gripe for another day. So they give us deposits. And as I said earlier, what we are tasked to do on an annual basis is meet the goals. And you're going to be seeing some of the goals later. But as I said, we have goals to provide certain amount of applications of credit to the community, a certain number of checking accounts to the community. What's one of the things that you guys see in certain communities, especially this community? I see it all the time in the Bronx. More than banks, what pops up to replace banks in our communities?
Cash.
Cash. What else?
Those online things like Chime.
Absolutely. But what do you see in the storefronts? Who replaces banks in these communities? ATMs. You know what replaces banks?
Cash.
Pawn shops,
Yeah.
check cashers.
Check cashers, yeah.
The pawn shops have now become financial institutions for low to moderate income areas. There are more pawn shops in the South Bronx and certain communities than banks. And the reason why? It's because the banks have left. And this program is situated to give incentive for the banks. And what we're here today is to try to garner support for this gentleman here, Javier. You met him earlier. He's been working at Popular for a very, very long time. I actually just promoted him recently. He was just assistant manager. Now he's got the keys to the store. So good job, Javi. Well deserved. But his branch is right on Dykeman. I don't know, what's the exact address?
180 Diamond.
180 Dykeman. So there are a few banks there, but they're all the big, I don't want to say big boys, but they're the Chases of the world that dominate 70 to 80% of the market share. There's not many small banks. And another big thing that BDD wants is to ensure that there's enough small, medium-sized banking coverage within the marketplace. So for example, there are certain communities that if you have a bank, 2 banks on every corner, the BDD does not want to participate in those communities. They want to participate in communities where they're underbanked. And you might say, is Dykeman underbanked? Absolutely. There's not that many banks in that Dykeman corridor as compared to what you see on Broadway, where you have every single major bank that still plays here. And we wouldn't be able to I have a branch here on 170th Street.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be able to apply for the BDD, even though it's still within this community board. But they are allowing us to apply New York State BDD in the Dykeman area because they did an analysis of that community and it showed that it is an underbanked part of this community board 12. But the largest part of it, and I alluded to it earlier, one thing that makes us uniquely different is our commitment to financial literacy. So when I say financial literacy, I mean from the gamut of helping young students understand what it means to budget, what it means to save, what it means to try to aspire to become an entrepreneur. We have all of these programs that we use our capital, which is our time and resources, just like you have Rolanda doing here this evening. We do this in droves. And we have committed hours and individuals that we have to meet on a month-to-month basis in order for us to keep this renewal for BDD. So it's a commitment that we will go out and leverage our not-for-profit partners, that we will go out into the communities and provide financial literacy. And I will tell you right now, financial literacy, again, we take it for granted. We take it for granted that we understand how we budget. But we'd be surprised when we go out to certain communities that are underbanked that they don't even know the basics of how to budget, what it means to how to save, what it means to have a goal to save money on a week-to-week basis, even if they're making 50 cents. How do you save that 1 penny every other week consistently so people reach their goals? And we do that consistently within the community. Actually, what we're doing a lot with our community board members that we're also BDD members of, we're actually partnering with the community board, just like what we had here. We're actually partnering and basically getting if you have the space, to get the community to come in for financial literacy. So I'm assuming you're doing your clinic at your offices?
Yeah.
Well, it would sort of be in here or in other public spaces to generate more traffic, so that it's a, hopefully full standing room, so people can get more of the content. And that's what we love to do and partner. But as I said before, a big part of this is making sure, and there's a commitment that we won't leave as well. So it's a very clear and concise contract between us and the state to say, hey, we expect you to stay. We expect you to meet these goals, and they are aggressive in order for you to continue to participate. Now, we have how many banks, how many BDs? We have 5 now.
Six.
We are now 33% of the entire New York State BDD, meaning the BDD continues to tap us on our shoulder and say, hey, how about this area? This is one of our few times where we said, hey, we want to expand our program. And we went out and we said, this is a great community board to do it in. We did not get to do an opportunity here locally at 170th, but we have an opportunity here in Dyckman. But it does not mean that we're just going to focus on the Dyckman area. We want to partner with this community board so that we could help the entire community board, which is majority of the Washington Heights area. Did I miss anything, gentlemen?
And Inwood.
Huh? And Inwood, absolutely.
Inwood,
And I don't want to forget Inwood.
You can't. You'll be crucified.
Yeah.
I think, Joel, if you scroll down a little bit, if you go to the next few pages, it gives you the branches that we currently have.
Yeah, right here.
The branches that we currently have at BDD.
Yes.
And if you look at New York State and New York City, in fact, we are one of the banks that has more BDD branches in terms of percentage wise.
Yeah.
Because we have 24 branches. Out of the 24 branches, 6 branches are in the LMI area. We in fact have more branches in the LMI areas, but BDD designated branches are 6 of them already. So New York State has a lot of belief in our bank and what we can provide to our community. And we stand strong by it, right? When we first opened up our branch in Bronx back in 1940s, 60s, we want to make sure that we really help the undeserved community and making sure that we are being that bank to help our communities and give something back to the community. So that's what you could see over
Do you
here.
mean that typo, or is that really Brooklyn Fifth Avenue?
Brooklyn Fifth, not Fifth Avenue, that's Sunset Park, actually. And what's interesting about this.
Freudian slip right there.
Yeah. What's interesting about this Dyckman bid that we're trying to receive with your support is Dyckman is not a low to moderate income census anymore, if you don't know. Actually, it's really interesting. This entire marketplace used to be low to moderate income. Just a year and a half ago, it turned into middle income.
According to who, Bud?
Yeah, right, according to who's
The AMI is 80,000, but the real median income up here is 60,000.
But the reality of how the CRA census, CRA track works,
Right.
this is now a middle income, meaning, and listen, I don't agree with how low the.
I'm a residential
Yep.
real estate broker.
Yep.
I deal with HDFC.
Yeah.
We see this all the time.
Yep.
So I'm gonna ask you about L&I loans.
Yep. Oh, fantastic.
You're doing that.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. We have first home buyers, we're actually coming up with our own portfolio product to be able to go out
When
into.
First Republic went down,
Yeah.
all of our business went with it.
Oh, I didn't know you guys did a lot of business with the First
They
Republic.
were the only ones making loans last year
Yeah,
before they crashed.
yeah. To low to moderate income?
Up here,
Wow, that's fantastic.
Harlem,
Yep.
Hamilton Heights,
Uh-huh.
Washington Heights,
Uh-huh.
they were going gangbusters.
Yeah.
Well, what type of loan was that?
They had like a 4%,
It's a program, what they call it,
low to
portfolio.
moderate income
It's a
loan.
pro-
They're subsidized by the feds
Okay.
to invest in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And they get.
So residential property?
Residential.
For residential
The-
property.
The issue that you have there
And
is,
Popular does a lot of.
we do a lot of it both on, the consumer side, and we invest in money, even with the BDD, in providing, we do a lot of commercial real estate. We do a lot of construction, multifamily, And a lot of our multifamily developments that we help sponsor and fund are in mostly low to moderate
But
income
that's
areas.
your point.
Mhm.
I don't agree that we're
Mhm.
now middle income.
You know what? It is now in the census where it's moderate income under CRA.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I do a lot of, I write a lot of grants.
Mhm.
And that is not what when you look at the statements of needs of different communities.
Oh, I agree.
And when you look at some of the census, what really is happening, it's not. I mean, about 45% of this community is severely rent burdened.
Oh.
Which means they do not have money for it.
I
That
agree.
means you can't take your kids to a dance
Yep.
class. You are, it's, so,
What's their income?
Yeah.
I have that somewhere else and I will happy to.
I mean, if the rent is too high, that's one thing, but if they don't make,
Well, it's, according to this, it said about, I forget the exact percentage, but it's really, anywhere from, the lowest end is actually $25,000 a year to about $55,000
Yeah.
a year. And if you, it's maybe 55,000 sounds middle
Yep.
income to you, or
Oh,
not to you.
not to me, not to me,
you.
not to me. To CRA,
I don't know how
yes.
much coffee you have today, but just let me finish. So, but what it means is, if you are 6 people in a 55, that making 55,000 total a year, it's not middle income.
No, it's
whether you
not.
like it or
We
not.
agree.
do you know about the Eliza project up in
No, we do not. No.
205?
Uh-huh.
So it's a new affordable housing.
Yep.
Rental,
Uh-huh.
you can get a 1-bedroom for like $500.
Oh, that's amazing.
There were 175 units.
Uh-huh.
Guess how many applications there were for it?
10,000?
80,000. And
God bless.
Jackie
Wow.
Cloth managed.
80,000 for just that many.
175, right.
Wow.
So.
That's incredible.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Bruce, let me just,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
No,
So we could get,
But it fits in.
Yeah, no.
so we could just get to, cause I really wanna, really get into the goals of the Dykeman branch.
Yep.
Right, so I know you mentioned a few things
And
and,
we have the goals in the next. page
yeah,
after- Yep.
I saw that, right? It's right on it right now. Cause ultimately what we wanna see, in the committee is how is this going, designating, Banco Popular Bank's branch in Dykeman. How is this going to, what is gonna be a Popular Bank's goal, one, and how are you gonna achieve that goal? You said through programming.
Yep.
Through, different loans. So I wanna get this detail.
Absolutely.
So we can really have a good picture.
Absolutely.
When we vote.
Yep.
So first of all, I wanna open up the floor on Zoom. Any questions on Zoom? Okay, great. So let's talk about, your goals. And who's gonna be running, these operations?
Well, locally, it would be Javier from the Dykeman Street branch as the branch manager.
Okay,
He would be directly accountable, but every single individual that's in this room today is accountable for making sure this program works. Because once we put the formal application in, we are ensuring to both, not only to this community board as a co-applicant, we are going to the New York State BDD, which we have a great relationship with, that we will meet these expectations. And interesting, with all of these goals that we have listed here, the BDD comes back and says, hey, you're a little too aggressive here because or they might say, no, we want you to go higher here. But a lot of these programs are based, once again, on how do we give more credit to people within the community. We are not a bank that is like the Chase or Citibank that gets high affluent customers to go in and open accounts. We are one of the few banks that actually still allow for accounts to be opened without a social security number. One of the few. So ultimately, if you have certain documentation, what's the documentation we need if they don't have a social security number? A TIN number, which anyone, as you know, could get. So a lot of our policies are really also focused on giving more access to banking services instead of going to the pawn shop, instead of going to the check casher at very low cost. And all of these items that you have here for the goals would be something that locally Javier would need to meet those expectations. And for us as leaders, myself and Solomon, to be able to oversee and ensure that we're doing all of these items that we are proposing to the BDD.
All right, so, and I'm gonna just ask a few questions here. So explain to me a little bit about the credit builder
Sure,
and these applications.
Javier, you want to talk about
Yeah,
the credit builder?
So basically, the credit builder, the way it works is when somebody doesn't have a credit at all, right? Or maybe they have a bad credit, so what's happening is they come to the bank, they apply, could be a minimum from 1,000 to 10,000, but normally what I see on a weekly basis is 1,000, right? Is that what they can afford? Maybe 2,000, right? So what happens is, we do a loan, right? But we don't give the money to the client. What we do is we deposit the money into a savings account, and the client is normally paying monthly, right? Every month for 12 months, and then at the end of the 12 months, what happens is the client withdraw the money, right? It could be $1,000, $2,000. So what happened with that is the client is able to be credited, right? Because we report to the credit agencies every month that they do the payment on time. Also, what we do secure credit cards from 300 to 3,000, right? It works like the regular credit card, but also when they do the payment, we report that to the credit bureaus, and that's how they build credits, or they can improve the credit score.
And one of our financial literacies is about establishing credit.
Yeah.
There's so much of our communities that don't know the basics of credit, and we do significant number of hours to be able to go out to the community to explain how credit works. And none of our programs are set to like sell anything. You know, it's not like, I'm sure back in your days when you had to go out and go into the market, meet these quotas are generated solely so we could give back to the communities.
So basically also when we do this financial literacy, we explain how it works, right? But we don't mention any product, right? And then after, if the participants are, when they're in the meeting, they want to come into the bank, that's a little bit different, right? But we explained how it works, right? What the expectations are, and then if they decide to come to the bank, and then they come. So I'm working with a non-for-profit organization, is a church, right? Basically, they have like 200 members, and they got coordinating to go to the church and explain, how credit works, budgeting, and also how to save money. So basically, when we do this, we don't say just go to Popular Bank, right? But we explain how it works. They can go to any bank, right? But then if after they decide to come to me, then we help them out.
Is there somebody specifically in your bank that's gonna be dedicated for these programs? Javier will be the point person.
Will be the point person.
And I want to tell you, Javier, with these events, be sure to, if you have a newsletter or if we decide to, vote for this, we really want to be involved. We want us to I'm going to give you my email, get the email of the board, so you can send these events to them, so we can reach our constituents.
That's correct.
So
that would be like the hardest part is getting the word out.
Yeah.
Like this clinic, like the worst thing that would happen is a great clinic that 5 people show up.
Right.
And when we know the entire community needs that help.
Right.
What they also add is that New York City and New York State is on top of us, right? So when we give a goal saying that we're gonna do a financial literacy every week, every month, we gotta make it. So we have no choice of not saying, we could not make it or whatnot, because they are very on top of the bank. So every 6 BDD branches that we spoke about, that those goals, we give it weekly, monthly basis, and it is our obligation to meet them. Not only meet them, also see the success. So let's say, for example, the credit builder loan is one of the famous ones. The New York State loves it, because the whole idea is that when you give a loan out, the credit score goes much more faster than giving a credit card, because credit card, you have to use it. If you don't use it, nothing happens. So the loan kind of gets more faster. So what the New York State wants is that, okay, you're giving a credit builder loan, but how are you now improving the community's credit scores around? Like how many people have gone from the credit builder loan to apply for a regular loan, have gone from a regular credit builder loan to now apply for an auto loan. So they want to see the success. So we kind of monitor these events and we are accountable for New York State. And if we are not accountable, they will ask us questions. So it's a very close ownership that we take, and myself and Carlos, we monitor it along with Javier. So this is not something that we just make it up just because we have to do it. It's something that we have to be accountable for the board as well as the New York State as well on an annual basis.
Okay. So how do you measure success, just to your point, how do you measure success in terms of programming? You mentioned the credit bureau. How do you measure success in programming?
In regards to the credit builder?
In regards to the programming itself, like the financial literacy, apart from credibility, when you go to in front of the state and you ask, and New York State asks you, hey, what type of programs are you doing? How do you measure success and how do they see success?
The bottom line.
Right. So one of the good things that we do is that, especially financial literacy, right? Let's say, for example, they will ask us how many financial literacy classes you did for the entire year, right? They will say, hey, once a month we did all together 12. We have to give them how many people attended. Or how many people attended, how many people came back to you folks to apply for loans or whatnot.
Okay.
They will ask us how many credit builder loan applications you gave us. One of the things also they will ask us is, okay, how many people applied for a regular credit card? And for those people that you applied for a regular credit card who got declined, how many people you offered credit builder? And out of how many people who applied for credit builder, how many people got approved? How many people in 6 months are able to now come and apply for it? So the success goes into detail.
Good.
And the renewal that we do is almost like a 10-page that we have to give every year, and they take it very serious. If you don't do it, they'll put us on a warning, is what's called a verbal warning. Then they'll give us a second warning, and then they will take us out. So it's very important for us to keep it going, and we make sure that we make the branch manager and the branch staff, be accountable for it, along with myself, David, making sure that we have a quarterly call with every branch who has a BDD to make sure that we are meeting our allocations, because we don't want to be at the end of the year figuring out things that we missed it about. And so far it has not happened with all.
Just to, also the way we do it, right, when a client come in and they apply for a real loan, right, using the credit score, what ended up happening is they get declined, but the credit score is maybe 500 or less, right? So what we do in the branch, so normally we explain to the client if he would like to receive a session about how credit works, right? And then what we do is we explain everything, how it works, how it can improve the credit score. And then we make him sign in sheet, right, saying that we give it this session. And then he can either, use our product, or he can go outside the bank, and they use a different bank, right? But at least we did the effort to explain how the credit works. So, and that sheet that we use, sign-in sheet, so we use it when they review the application. Again, we provide, what we're doing, with the clients.
Okay, so go ahead, Bruce.
Where do you have the first time home buyer seminars?
That's April
In the branch.
We have
okay.
them in the branch.
So you have a meeting room.
We'll use the entire branch. It's after hours.
Okay.
But what we'd love to do, again, from what you just said, sir, is if we could have an opportunity, because a lot of our spaces uptown are a lot smaller. I have some space, like I have the Washington Heights branch on 180th that's bigger. So we have multiple spaces that we can leverage, but we would love for some advertising of constituents to say, we want to do this for the community.
Yeah.
Like if we could have some people, and the greatest thing about First Home Buyer, and you see this from the ground up, is there are so many awesome programs that New York State, the Fed has, and there's more people that could get into it might not be in the Heights. We'd love them to stay in the Heights, but it might be another community that they go to. But there's so many programs that people have access to that they could reach. And I'm going to say this, Cordo, the American dream of homeownership, whether that be a 300 square foot like a co-op, that's theirs. And people are closer than they think to getting there. It might take a year of savings, but we have programs of literacy to share what the steps are, and programs with a lot of the grants that hold the money to help with those down payments.
So I'm going to ask you a few other questions.
Sure.
So on the commercial side, We spoke about, obviously on the personal side.
Yep.
What are you guys doing, in terms of commercial loans
Great question.
and deposit accounts
Great
for
question.
businesses?
I can take it up. So on the first of the commercial side, what we do is that we really focus on a lot of real estate, commercial construction and commercial construction loans and regular real estate, where we do a lot of affordable housing constructions, right? That's one of our biggest niche market that we pretty much dominate in the New York City neighborhood, very especially in New York, the 4 boroughs, except for Staten Island. The second part of the commercial side is that we have small business lending program for small business owners, where up to $100,000 is an easy process to get an approval. Like you could get an approval within 24 to 48 hours. You'll be able to get small loans like a $50,000 or $100,000 term loan or a working capital loan that you want. We also partner with SBA. We do SBA 504s. We do SBA 7A loans vigorously. So what we also do is that even if a customer doesn't qualify on the conventional side, we'll try to see whether we could get them qualified through the SBA 7A side of it. So we do that, and obviously I lead the business banking side of it. So we underwriting, the way that we call underwriting unique is that it's all hands-on. It's not a normal paper that you just submit the file and say, okay, you know what, let the system make the decision. We make the decision for every single customer, and we go through the process of every single customer to make sure how can we get them a loan approved. If we cannot go through a regular conventional, how can we get them the 7A options or the 504 options, depending on the needs as well. So we do that. On the account standpoint of it, we do have accounts. We don't have anything called a free account, but there are a lot of ways you could avoid fees, very especially for business customers, whether it's having a merchant services, doing some activities on the account. We'll try to avoid them, and we have some basic accounts where the clients, business owners can maintain minimum balances and avoid fees as well. We offer the cash management, the cash management services, including the merchant service that you just spoke about, the 3% or the 4% charges that we do. So it's a full blown out services for small business customers. You know what? One of the things with the BDD program is that they wanted small banks to bank, right? The Chase of the world and the Bank of the world are too big for the small people. So we want to be that bank that who can help those small business customers and still give them a personalized services, right? As we speak.
You have a seminar about all that?
We could, yes. So we do that. Financial literacy is part of that program also, is to educate small business owners. And that's why I really like your program around commercial leases. When we do commercial loans, we literally can decline a loan because the commercial lease is not favored to the bank. Because the tenant can put, the tenants can be in trouble, and that could put us, our loan, in trouble. So we might not be able to give a working capital loan or a leasehold improvement loan simply because of a commercial lease. So these are like great information that we partner, and you know, we love to do these seminars even more.
All right, question. We'd love to create seminars that you have, and I said this earlier to you. We want to be invited to hear, you know, it could be a month, every other month, to hear what your merchants are asking us. Like what type of information they'd love to hear from the bank.
How do you be bank?
We would love that. We would love an opportunity for people to say, hey, we would love a bank to tell us this about how this works. We will help create it and come out and provide our resources and our time to give it. You know, you said it earlier, the partnership between the community boards and the branch is critical because we're a bank still foremost. You are the eyes and ears to the community to tell us we'd love to see this.
Yeah.
And we would love to be able to provide that back to the community.
I'm gonna just
Sorry,
finish.
I apologize.
No, I'm gonna finish my line of question. I'm gonna send it to you. So give me some of the documents that you would need. There's a 2-part question. Well, I have a follow-up question after this, but two-part question. What are the documents that you need? And what's your commitment to the community in the commercial side?
When you say document for the commercial loan stand?
Yeah, on the commercial loans.
So up to 100,000, all we need is a P&L and a balance sheet for the most recent year, just to make sure. And then we'll ask for 2 or 3 months bank statement, so we will get the listing. So that will be the only requirement up to $100,000. When you go above $100,000, you typically would need 2 years business tax returns, 2 years personal tax returns that we would ask. Up to $100,000, it's within 24 to 48 hours, we'll make a decision whether it's an approval or decline decisions for you. So faster approval, faster turnaround. Anything over $100,000, it's 5 business days.
Okay.
Right, of the decision that we will do, on the documentation standpoint of it.
And your commitment to this neighborhood would be what on the commercial side?
So our goal is to at least get 2 to 3 business loans approved every month. On the
Okay.
business. Right now, the question that we always have is that we don't, obviously, we have to market ourselves, right? We also have to make sure that community board also helps us to really put our name out there. So we will love to be part of seminars, to come over here, attend, because that's where we'll be able to showcase, like, what we can do. Very especially on the seminars, we don't want to push the bank. It's more about helping them to understand what a small business is all about. And we want them to understand that they could go to all the banks they want, but obviously if they do come to us, we want to make sure that we are also providing them the benefits of it, right?
Okay.
One of the goals for us as a BDD is that we need to at least have 3 to 5 business loans approved on a yearly basis for this community, right?
Okay.
Which are around the
You said how many?
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
On, over the year.
Over the year.
Entire year.
24.
Well, that's
Okay.
business accounts.
That's business accounts.
Within the community.
So my last question in this line of questions, do you offer funds to startup, or do you have to be having revenue in the past 2 years?
So typically it will be at least 2 years in business. That will be the underlying factor. There's no minimum revenue standpoint. It has to be 2 years or more. Startup is something that what we do is that we partner with a lot of CDCs, right? So Pursuit is one of them. RBAC is another one that we normally use. And we normally go through the SBA 7A side of it. We don't directly fund them, but we will help them to guide them through, especially the startup standpoint.
You said CDC?
CDCs, Community Development Corporations.
Yeah.
Pursuit is one of the biggest one, I would say, but there are a lot of local CDCs that we work with. There are a lot of non-conventional, but still it's a federal grant that they normally use. So we'll help the CDCs to make sure that we determine what type of funds that we could get them, and we'll try to help them with partner.
And that and then you leverage 7A if they don't have the
Exactly, along with the 504.
yes. Go ahead, Carl. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just very briefly, if we're talking about like loans, these are not gifts, are they?
I'm sorry?
These are not gifts. Yeah.
No, absolutely no. Yeah,
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
No. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
It's not grand.
No, New York State is not saying here, just give it out. Yeah.
You know, you sound, you know, it can sort of sound.
Yeah, actually, Elvin, who is part of this board, Elvin Adams.
Yeah.
He's also a BDD branch at 116. So part of our team here, he works with the CDC there.
All right, guys, I have the floor.
Yeah, you have the
I have the
floor.
floor, please. I have the floor.
I apologize.
Yeah, to be better. So, I mean, it can sound sort of very liberal, you know, to dole out these things and stuff, but now where the rubber meets the road is where maybe defaults occur. What are the remedies? How do you pursue your remedies? I mean, how do you try to get back your money if they can't pay?
Okay, so there's
I mean, some of these businesses might be distressed. I mean, they are not financially, strong.
Obviously, our current default ratio is less than 1% at the Popular Bank. So obviously we pick and choose the customers, obviously based on the credit, based on the financials, how we want to approve it. In a default scenario, we will give ample time for the customers to recoup or make sure that they are paying us. We will try to negotiate the terms. We will try to reduce the interest rate. We might sometimes extend the amortized period. Like if it's a 3-year loan, we might do for 5 years to make the payment less or whatnot. In the event if the business is definitely going out of business or whatnot, obviously it goes to a collection stuff and then it goes through the collection agency, which is we call the workout group. And then we'll try to figure out how can we get the funds. Now, in the event that there's no way, because obviously we do have the personal guarantee in most of the stuff, but in an event that there's no way to collect the funds, we will write off the loans. But it could all differ based on the type of collateral that we used. If it's an equipment, we will try to sell the equipment back. If it is a real estate, we will try to recapture the real estate back or whatnot. If it is a working capital, that's where the most of the problem happens, right? Working capital loans. If there is no way to recoup, then it will be a loss for the bank. And again, we'll try our best to kind of expand and try to help the clients as much as we can.
You mean there is no recourse to the client's resources to get back the money?
Well, we will try all our best, right, on the default case. It's a process that we have to follow. First, we have to send communications out We have to make sure that we send them enough, we have to help them in many ways to make sure that they are paying us back. And if that doesn't happen, it goes to the workout. Because there's a personal guarantee, right? We will always make the personal guarantor liable for it, right? It's part of the process. And then it all depends on the situation, right? What the extreme step would be. And we'll try to figure out how we could cut down our losses as much as we can. If we have to write off, then we will write off.
All right, I get that. How often?
How often?
Yeah, in terms of like percentage, you know.
Oh, with our percentage?
With these defaults and things.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%?
Less than 1%.
Over what period are you looking at?
Well, for the last 2 years I'm looking at, right, very especially COVID was the biggest challenging part for us, right? COVID was the most disruptive for us. Right now, for the last 2 years, our default ratio has been less than 1%, right? In fact, I can literally count and say New York City itself, we have like 3 customers, that's all. That's how it is very low. Because we try to do a lot of the ways to hold back, do some forbearance if we can, try to see if the business can revamp and come back and whatnot. So we'll give a lot of options. The worst case scenario would be is that the business completely got shut down and there's nothing we could pretty much do about it. But that's a very rare case scenario. And if you do an SBA 7A loans, we do typically get guarantees from the federal government. What we have to keep in mind on the 7A loan is that customers cannot default for the first 18 months. Because if they do default in the first 18 months, the 7A guarantee will not kick in. So it's still a bank loss, even though it's a 7A loan that we are giving it. But if it does over 18 months, then we do have the SBA guarantee too. So it's more about weighing in what the losses would be, because the whole idea is not just going to courts everything, because it is costly. So sometimes trying to recoup 50,000, we'll pay a lawyer 100,000 is not worth it. So we'll make a business decision at that point.
It's $100,000. Now that's the legal age society. You don't charge $100,000 now.
So, I'm gonna read a question. Sorry, Shoshana, let me read your question now. And then I have a few other questions in regards, Alexis, you would have, okay. Let me just answer this question. What residential home ownership programs come out of BDD? The void left by FRB is real, and a handful of condominium developments slated for Washington Heights and Inwood may not have an outlet.
Yeah, so going back to the BDD program doesn't dictate what type of programs, they don't help create programs. We are creating a portfolio product that's very specific for the low to moderate income customer. One of the things that coincides regulatory for banks is what we call CRA. Community Reinvestment Act. And that dictates a lot of what we're supposed to be doing on an annual basis. We are examined by them on an annual basis. It is one of our toughest exams. One of the biggest things that they want us to do more of within Popular Bank is to be able to provide more first home buyers, be able to provide more individuals in the community. So what this funding does, okay, this $10 million that New York State provides, it gives us the opportunity to also provide more funding for first home buyer program. So the challenge with FRB was they had a very, very great, amazing portfolio product. When I say portfolio, this is not agency. This is not Fannie or Freddie. This stays on the balance sheet of what used to be First Republic Bank. They take the full risk of the loan. They're not selling it. They're not packaging it. They hold it on their balance sheet. And very few banks do that. We are in the process of creating our own program because this is one of the areas that the CRA asks us to do. We are in a lot of low to moderate income areas, and they expect us to do more of this. It's very transparent. The challenge that we see, so someone brought it up, is there's not enough inventory for low to moderate income. There's not enough inventory. So when we are having first home buyer seminars, of course we want people to stay within the community. But we are also helping them to see that there's other opportunities in other places that they might live, where the inventory might be a little bit better. On the other side, as you heard Solomon do, that we do very well with CRA, is that what we're known for is do a lot of construction financing for low to moderate income housing for new development. So we do win there. What we need to do a better job is do more residential mortgages because we didn't have a product. We basically use our Freddie product, which basically isn't as competitive as FRB was within the space, and they dominated.
Are you guys getting a product for?
We're gonna have a product within the next 3 months, okay?
Okay.
And basically what this product, why FRB was so great with this product is because they provided a lot of the closing costs. The closing cost for FRB was one of the lowest in the communities for low to moderate income. There has not been one bank yet to open that space. Now, to be very transparent, we're not gonna be at the level of where FRB was, but will we be competitive? Will we be able to provide the resources and the grants to be able to get the people to help? Absolutely, absolutely. Our challenge, once again, is how do we help people that want to stay within the community when there's no inventory? And if there is inventory, let's be honest, the only ones who can afford it are the doctors that don't want to, travel that far.
Yeah. So, just on that point.
Yep.
Your goals, are they tied to the address or where they purchase?
No, it's tied to the certain communities. So CRA.
So the address on the account?
Yes.
On the account,
address where
not where they
yeah.
purchase?
Yeah.
Okay, that's important to keep in mind. Alexis?
Now I almost forgot. So, and you might have said this, so forgive me.
It's okay.
I have two things.
You fast typer.
One, do you have special accounts for nonprofit organizations?
Not special,
Not special, but
not special, but we are,
specific.
we,
I could take that.
yeah, you want to take it?
Yeah, so we do, so not a special account, but we do have a big portfolio of non-for-profit. We are one of the very few banks who lend to non-for-profits, which is very rare. You won't hear that. I mean, large non-for-profits, every bank would love it, but we go from the small level to non-for-profits. We work very closely with non-for-profits. I think David alluded towards over here that, we also have our own employee funds where we in return give it to a lot of non-for-profits. So non-for-profit is as an integral part, and I could say this proudly because I come from another institution where non-for-profit is much more less. Popular Bank is one of the banks and the non-for-profit and the regular customer ratio is pretty high. So we definitely take a big value in doing it and also really working closely with them for the communities that they serve. That's been our trademark, I would say.
And do you sponsor things for nonprofits?
We do a lot. Quite frankly, I've been in banking now 30 years, and I've gone to more galas here at Popular Bank for not-for-profits than I've ever had in my 30 years of banking.
And I'm actually not talking about galas, I'm talking about events. So,
Yeah, events.
so, and I'm talking, I mean, public events. So let's say, for lack of a better example, let's say, because we have this great thing here, it's called, jazz, what's that, jazz, but anyway, it's a jazz program.
Yeah, I heard you talking about, you were there this past weekend, like there was some community thing, yes.
So they're an organization in here, and let's say they are having a community event. And maybe they, and I'm just using this as an example, I just don't know their finances. So let's say they want to bring in guest artists or have a sponsorship, or they want to have some sort of like a community centric happening around these events.
We talk to those all the time.
Right now,
But here's the thing, what
about
we
the
want
application. So we
is
get
not
down
the
to,
ability to market ourselves. We want the ability to be able to provide financial literacy. That's our ticket. So, the cost, when we do sponsor things, and we sponsor things all the time, unfortunately, it doesn't come for free. It requires, we want to do financial literacy, meaning if there's a not-for-profit that does really good, we want to find a way to partner with them so that we can provide financial literacy, and then we'll find ways to help sponsor them for certain things. We do it all the time. We spend a lot of money within all the communities, but the reality is there's a lot of people that, ask for money. I mean, I get asked as one of the senior leaders for money, probably more than we're opening accounts, to be quite frank, because we're very well known within certain communities. We are very limited with what we could do, but we definitely do it. We definitely do it. We never say no. We want to understand first who it's benefiting. We want to understand who the not-for-profit is, because the reality is we do a lot of business not-for-profit, but at the same time, everyone knows that not-for-profits are a risky type of industry. We want to ensure that they are really doing what's right for the community and we understand who we're dealing with.
This is
but
something
yes.
completely off
Uh-huh.
because you're saying about community and financial literacy. I don't know, maybe you guys, I think some of you are too young, but, you, don't lie.
Wow, thank you. They say Asians don't raisin, right? No. This one does.
So, years and years ago,
Yeah.
we used to go to school and you used to get this little book, bank book, and you used to put 10 cents and it would be.
Statement
That is-
savings.
Yeah, that is something that I think children and the schools
Yeah.
in this neighborhood need to start them on the right path for financial literacy. How-
We still have statement savings. We don't open new ones though, right? We grandfather them, right? Statement savings, passbook savings.
So we had the passbook statement, we have it yet.
But do we still open them?
We still open.
We still open them?
Yeah, we still open them, but
We
no.
still have passbook savings. We're one of the few banks that still has passbook.
Because, we have some.
Yeah, only if they ask, so we don't advertise it because,
Yeah,
We're not supposed to advertise it. Yeah.
Your generation, they don't wanna.
But there's like, some schools that we have that, have a lot of many low-income
No, I
families.
know.
Some of them are really struggling. I can say that off the top of my head, PS 153, no, Pablo Duarte. And I think for something like that for the children in there, if you could, that would
If-
just be great. And that speaks to early on financial literacy.
So if I could just interject here, I'm sorry, just for the sake of,
Yeah.
for time. Maybe that's something that we can include in their
I
programming.
would love to
So,
speak to the
yeah.
principal.
Sorry.
Love.
Just 1 minute, so we have something that's called public key savings, right? That any minor can open the account, could be 5, 10 years old, but they have to be open with a mother under
A
5.
guardian. Or a
A
guardian.
guardian. Okay.
Yep.
So I just want to
That's a
move,
great-
move along, because I really want to talk about this application. And it's important to keep in mind that to the committee is that we're supporting this or not supporting this in regards to their application with New York State. So, we're talking about the great things that they're offering and and the commitments that they're giving to us through, loans, deposit accounts and programming, and which is all great. And we just have to keep that in mind that this is what we're doing, right? We are seeing if we're going to write a letter of support for their application. Now, how long, first of all, in the immediate area, who are the other BDD banks, in our district?
So there is no other BDD in Community Board 12.
None,
None.
not even, on this side, on the lower side.
None. It's
Okay.
not on Community Board 12. The closest one is Elvin's Market.
No, I'm talking about that are not, Popular Bank.
Oh, that are not Popular Bank. So you got, so we have the South, we have the South Bronx, we have 149th Street, we have East Tremont. We don't have the Fordham area, that community board. I forgot which community board Fordham resides in. I believe that's MNT. But if you want the information, we could pull out that information from the New York State BDD site.
Yeah.
We could provide that information.
We would love, I would love that for the
Because it
committee.
shows each community board and which bank coincides with the BDD.
And each board or district, I guess, has one BDD.
Some might have.
Some might have multiple.
Some might have.
Okay.
multiple, yeah.
Yeah, so it's mainly, they call it as underbanked communities, right? So that means there's only 2 or 3 banks out there. Brooklyn Fifth Branch, there's only one branch out there, right? So it's all underbanked. So if your community has 2 or 3 banks, they might give all 3 banks the funds, right? That could be the case. Or sometimes the other banks might say, we don't need the funds, we'll just stay there, and Popular Bank will be the only bank. So it could differ, community board to board, but we could definitely get you the details for the community board 12, what are the banks out there and what are the banks
And
participating.
anything local you would like anything
Yeah,
neighbor- in
I'm just
Manhattan?
saying, because I imagine that New York State regulates how many BDDs per district of,
Yeah.
in the city. Obviously, you're not gonna have 2 or 3 BDDs
Yep.
within a district,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
So that's my question.
Okay.
Now, tell me about your application process. What is it? How, and what are the steps that you're taking?
Yep.
To, apply for BDD?
Well, the first thing is, I know we passed the slide. One of the most important aspects of actually with the application is getting a minimum of 2 letter support, not only from the community board, for not-for-profits within the community or from civil servants. We have right now 6 with another 7 pending from Congressman Adriana Espaillat. So, you know, and we could probably get, and not to brag, probably another 10 or 15 more. Only because, once again, as I said earlier, we're one of the few minority deposit institutions, but we also focus, and everyone knows that we focus within low to moderate income communities. That's a big part of our application process. The other part of the application process is a lot of the numbers that you saw there with regards to what our commitments are, okay? Another big part of the application process is what you call a pro forma. Basically showing, will this funds that the New York State provides, will it allow you, this bank, this branch, to be more profitable so that more than likely that branch will stay. There's a reason why the Chases and the Citibanks, BofAs do not participate in the BDD. They don't need it. Yeah, that branch might not be profitable, but their overall organization is. So we have to provide a pro forma. And I was joking earlier, this is not charity. And I love that you said, we pay a significant rate back to the state, back to the taxpayers actually, that is above market, which hampers, to be very frankly, as a banker, our margins to make profit. And BDD knows this. And they said to us in our one for our East Tremont, David Solomon, is this pro forma saying you guys are going to lose money because of the BDD? And we said, yeah, we're actually losing money right now because of the rate we're providing, but we still want the BDD. The reason why we want the BDD is because it still allows us to have the capital to do the funding projects within the communities that we know we could find a way to make money there. So even though our branches might get temporarily hurt by it because of the rate we're giving, we still try to make a way to provide that capital, other resources by doing construction, multifamilies in low to moderate income areas. But going back, so we need the letters of support. We need our performance. We need the full application. What am I missing in the application?
That's about it.
That's about it, right?
And obviously we have to do the performer with all the other 6 branches
Yes.
too. We have to not only give this branch, but also the other community boards, what we have done for the last 4 years with them. And then we'll submit a formal application. New York State will review the applications, first of all, the Department of Finance, and then they will have another committee meeting, and then they will then finally approve it or whatnot. And before they approve it, they'll come to the branch, they will look at the local community board. So obviously you folks will be also invited as well. They will interview folks as well.
Yes.
Of how we can do it. It's a whole meeting that happens. And then once everybody agrees and they do believe that there is a benefit of this branch being there and these funds will help, then they will approve it. So it is at least another 3 to 6 months process.
BDD wants us to be accountable to the community board
And Joel,
as
keep
partners.
also mind, Joel, that even before they said that go for Dykeman, they did their research already.
Yeah.
Because they have to say, hey, we would love Dykeman to be there. And they did the research and say, yes, you guys can go. And okay, that's also mainly because of the track record that we have had with the other BDDs as well. So that's part of the reason why that we got this Dykeman as well to move forward.
Okay, so my last question, and then we'll move on to our voting. So in your experience, has banking improved in districts where BDD, where you guys have a BDD?
You know what? I don't want to speak for Elvin. You know, you guys know Elvin more on this board. You could see, I've been here at Popular for 15 months, and we've had BDD at 116 for a little bit. But the opportunity for us to provide more access to credit year over year, meaning we're not only doing more applications, we're approving more and we're giving more. And one thing I said, if an individual were to go out in the street and talk to every single big bank out there, none of them do an unsecured loan, a loan, term loan. Absolutely, none of them will do it. We continue to do it even. It's higher risk. It's you know, we're giving upwards of how much sometimes? $50,000. $50,000 with a promise that you'll pay me back.
Yeah.
And they're not for individuals that are not within the community. It's not like someone coming from Queens and coming to one of our branches in the Heights or 116th Street. These are people that live within the community that come to us. And this, one of the sadder parts is they don't even bank with us. People are coming to us and they bank with Chase. We all know, if you bank at one of the big banks, I still have, I own some of my boss, right? They have a great online mobile banking. They're amazing for convenience. But we have customers that bank at Citi, Bank of America, and Chase that come to us for products that the other banks won't give. And yes, we should try to get them to bank with us, but we don't force them. We don't have restrictions that say, well, if you don't bank with us, we won't give you this loan. And those are the specific things that we are accountable to do because of the BDD.
Okay.
One thing I'll add also is that 116th Street, East Tremont is going on their 5th year now because they've been progressing very well. And again, keep in mind, there's an annual report that we have to provide. It's a full blown out review for the entire year of everything that we have done year over year. And New York State has seen the progress in those community boards year over year, and that's how they're approving it.
Okay. And
if they don't do well, they will give us a warning. The second warning, they do pull out the funds, and that's how it happens.
Do you know Elvin?
Say it again?
Do you know Elvin?
I do know Elvin. How long is the renewal? When is your renewal after you get approved?
It's 1 year.
1 year.
It's every year you have to.
Every year.
You have to
Every year
renew
you
every year.
Every
Okay.
year.
I have a question. I'm gonna honor this question.
Yep.
Because he's been patient. Is there any data on the positive economic impact? I guess we spoke about this, have within their respective community. Well, we spoke about that.
Yep.
So we're going to discuss this
Yep.
as a committee. So I want to recommend a few stipulations that we go into voting for a letter of support. So first, obviously, I want to make sure that if we do write a letter of support for this application, we want to make sure that they meet New York State requirements for programming, for deposit accounts, for loans, mortgages, and commercial loans. Obviously, New York State already mandates this, so putting this in the record, it holds them accountable if next time they can come back and they want to apply again. I also want to put on the record and on the stipulations that we're directly involved in the programming, so that the branch manager reaches out to us in terms of financial literacy, programming for kids, FHA seminars. All of this, we want to be directly involved in the attendance, because without getting these seminars out to the people, they're worthless, right? If you're holding seminars and there's no members of the community there, it's
Would
for no
you be
reason.
okay with, if this were to go, for Javier to join your development committee monthly?
So there, if he wants to come in
Whether it
monthly,
be Zoom.
that would
whether it
be great.
Face to face.
That would be
I'm
great.
not dictating, but that's what we do for the community boards.
Yeah.
The ones that have a development committee.
You're right.
Yeah. Some of them do not.
If you could join us, you'll have my direct number, my direct email, and the email of the board. We just want to be I want to be very intentional in being a part of this process. So,
The BDB would be more than happy to hear that. We've not heard that from any community board.
so,
not one.
So, because program is important, and I want to make sure that the funds go and stay in the community, right? I don't want people to just have addresses here to take advantage of these programs and not,
Understood.
and not be from this neighborhood. Any other stipulations that the committee wants to, really put into this, resolution?
Nope.
Okay, I'm gonna take all the commitments that we've mentioned in your PowerPoint. And I'm gonna put it in our
And
proposal.
they might have to be higher, to be very honest. Like when we go through the conversation, they might say, lower this, raise this, because they, as Solomon said, they it's, I would love to say it's a fun process, but it's like an audit.
Yeah,
We're getting audited by both New York State and the city, and it's like, and I want to say, well, can we lower the rate? Can we find a little bit more margin? I got the banker sense of me, but for now, we'll continue to do it.
Do you need a letter of support every time you renew?
No.
Just the first
Just the
time?
first time. Just the
Also,
first
I wanna put in the proposal, that, at next year, I want you guys to come back
Absolutely.
and give us, maybe like the same thing you give and present to New York State, give it to us.
Absolutely.
Let us see some metrics, right?
Absolutely. We'd
Right,
love
so
to do that.
in the.
You know what? If the BDD heard that, they'd probably force us to do it for every community.
Alright, so.
We can't get you in front of the community, the BDD. No, they would ask for it.
Right, so,
Because they're very specific on like how we communicating. And we say, I've sent 12 emails to the district manager and I haven't gotten one back.
yeah,
And Joe, just let you know, all those reports and all those data will come from me and Carlos directly as well. So Javier kind of involves in the community and what he does.
yeah.
We gather the data, the reports, and we will submit it to the board.
Absolutely.
Which we normally do it every year, so it's not be a problem.
Okay, results. So, we'll do it, maybe 4 quarters from now at the beginning of Q2 in 2025.
Again, Javier,
20,
however meetings.
Pending approval.
pending, yes,
Yeah,
pending
everything-
approval. This is just my recommendations in my letter of support.
Yeah.
In our letter of support. So 1 year review of how it went. We would love to know.
Absolutely.
How long is it gonna take you to get approved?
Well, again, it's, the approval process is a lengthy one.
Yeah.
And again, it's not guaranteed. It's
6
not,
months?
It's a 3 to 6 months.
and it's not guaranteed, even with the support that you might provide us, it's still not guaranteed, only because ultimately it's that difficult, and again, they also understand that not many banks raise their hands. Actually, very few banks raise their hands. Back in the day where interest rates were nothing, and we remember those days very, very well, a lot of banks wanted to do it because
It was easy.
it was easier. Interest rates were low. So when there's expectation to do all these services and then earn very little margin or even less, most banks say, we'd rather not do it. So
Yeah.
we're one of the few that continue to say, we'll do it. And I love everything that you want to add in there, because I think ultimately when you meet with the BDD folks and you'll have an opportunity to do that, I think these are things that you could share with them and they'd be very excited to hear.
Great, so I wanna call to a vote, a letter of support for Popular Bank and their application for their BDD application, for this district with these provisions. A provision that they meet New York State requirements for programming, deposit accounts, loans, FHA commercial loans, and the commitment stated in the slideshow, if I missed any. Also, a 1-year review on Q2 of 2025 of their performance, pending obviously approval, of their performance, and then their involvement in the community in regards to their banking and programming. Also, last thing, in this vote, I want to also include the direct involvement of programming and constant communication with the branch manager, involving the programming of financial literacy and other programs that they have planned with their application. So with these 4 stipulations, I call to a vote, and maybe you can tally.
Can you just give me New York State standard?
Yeah, New York State's requirements for their BDD application.
Yeah.
1
1-year review,
1-year review,
community involvement.
community involvement, and direct communication with the branch manager for their programming.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So I call to the vote, and we have Hector on Zoom. Hector, you still with us?
Absolutely.
Do you have anything to add to the stipulations there?
No, you covered all of them, Joel. Thank you.
Thanks, okay. So,
Is that-
Radia, how do you vote? Radia, you still there?
Yes,
How do you vote?
yes.
You got it?
You vote yes?
Her vote is yes. Hector, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alexis, how do you vote?
Yes?
Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carl, how do you vote? And
Mhm.
yeah, so I vote yes, and that's 6 yes, 6 yeses in the affirmative. And your letter of support passes to the committee.
Thank you.
Keep in mind that this is only a recommendation.
Absolutely.
That internally. So I will present this at the general board.
Yep.
And in the general board, they will approve or decline my recommendation,
Absolutely. Yep.
right? So my letter of support will go to the general board and they will approve or deny it.
Yep.
But I will present on behalf of you guys to the general board. But feel free to come to our general board and
yeah.
present.
Absolutely.
Not present, it's like a 2 hour, a 2 minute window that you guys can.
Yeah, no.
Talk about it.
Elvin suggested that too, and I advised Elvin, if there was a vote, obviously you'd have to recuse yourself, because he works for
Right,
the bank,
right.
He's like, yeah, that's right, I can't
Yeah,
vote for my own firm,
Mhm.
but we'd be more than happy to do it. Thank you again for the time.
Yeah, and
And
thank you guys for your time.
and if you could get, Javier, you have your email information card,
Yeah.
if you could mail the dates, the Zoom and the
Yeah.
stuff,
Absolutely.
Javier's committed to making sure that he,
And I'd love to have all of, your business card.
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
I don't have my card on me. Wait, do I have a card? No, I do not. It's actually, that last page has all my information.
Oh, I on the last
It
page.
has all of our
Thank
information.
you so much, Solomon.
You're
It's a
welcome.
pleasure.
It has all of our information.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Now, I have history in Washington Heights. You guys remember KP Cons? The sneaker store?
Yes,
I used to work there.
KP. Oh, nice.
1994.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So you remember KP Cons?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who does
Right
the
there,
160?
180.
That's Elvin Adams. He's the board member.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elvin, yeah, he works for
Yeah.
Papa Bank.
So if you,
Yeah.
so if you need to ask for some well-needed money to sponsor some amazing programs, Elvin is the person to go to. He will call me right away and be like, hey, David, we've got a great program. And that's the way it works. So Elvin is the person, yes.
I just want, just to move the agenda along, but thank you so.
Thank you,
guys.
Please.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you so much. I'm gonna wrap it up right now. So we can take off. Yeah. Maybe 5 minutes. more. Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much.
Solomon, it was a pleasure. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Email.
Thank you. Thank you.
First time, home buyer,
Yeah, send me the email. I'll put it on my next. It was a pleasure. What's your name? Thank you. Carlos, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your time.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
You know, and it's the same reason that you do, because people don't know that we have a search.
All right, so,
People don't know.
guys, thank you for sticking it out in our.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Both, wonderful presentation.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Alexis, nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Hey,
Great to-
Lava, thank you so much.
Thank you
I
for
appreciate
inviting
it.
me.
Yeah. We'll be in touch for sure. Sorry for the mix up earlier. I had like 2 different.
I'm sure you got a lot going on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, thank you so much, whoever stuck it out. I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Who's here still? All right. So going on to no new business? Any new business? Any old business?
That was a lot.
Yeah, but it was good.
No, Radia. Oh, I just got your question. Any announcements? Okay, all right, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion. All right, motion to adjourn, Carl, seconded by Bruce. It's 9:40,
Good
meeting's
job.
over.
Go.
That was really great.
You brought, You found these guys, right?
Yeah.
No, that was
It
wonderful.
was, it was great. I mean, thank you, guys.